Do you have thoughts on content locked behind limited amount of attempts? No, that's not limited amount. It happens like every 15 minutes. There's nothing in this game that is limited attempts. However, in other games, like other games with limited attempts, no, not particularly. I don't really have too much thoughts on it. They're designed in a way that you have the combo game, so it falls under combo gaming. Limited attempts fall under combo gaming. Same sentiments. You have the combo game. The thing that I failed in. You're thinking about something. What do you mean? Well, if you're thinking about something else, you need more context, or you need to provide more context. I don't really know what type of game you're talking about, but it sounds like a combo game. So like I don't know. It's a relic of the arcade style games. Arcade style games tend to have limited attempts, like 3 lives, 2 lives system. That could be limited attempts. Combo gaming could be limited attempts. Basically, you have one shot to do everything in a row properly. Speedrunning is also limited attempts. It was Dark Souls 2, Dark Looker Boss. I see. Yeah, that's a combo game. Limited attempts tend to fall in all my comments dealing with combo gaming. So you have to execute when it matters, as opposed to technically you don't have to execute based on consistency, but the limited attempts make you like have to get those attempts again. There's a thing in this game that I did yesterday, the drone racing, that technically is limited attempts. However, there's a task in this game that requires you to combo game the entire drone section. The thing about this game though is I just realized that you could exit and save. So in this game, you can turn the combo game with limited attempts into a consistency game where you can just practice the one segment over and over again. So you can turn it into a completion thing. In most cases, this game, almost all the mini games, pretty much anything in this game are limited attempts. However, because of the save function and how you can like save and retry and whatnot in certain segments, you don't really have to combo game and it becomes a consistency game. But technically, all the mini games are limited attempts. And how do I feel about that? Combo gaming. For example, batting, right? When you go to the batting cages, each event, to be successful in them, you have limited attempts to secure the batting requirement. The game could be really mean and make it so that you have to hit all of them, which it has done before. RGG has gone so hard before where the mini games is a full combo game. The nice thing is it's a balance, because these games ask you to do something with limited attempts but with infinite retries, and this game does the same thing. So most of the time it's not too bad, at least specifically in this game. I personally prefer consistency gaming. So limited attempts would hurt consistency gaming. I don't prefer combo gaming. Combo gaming is not my jam. I think as a person, my only thoughts right now about limited attempts that are brutal is arcades. Since I grew up in a time where console gaming like this and PC gaming like this doesn't exist before, and it was arcades, it's the most brutal form of limited attempts. You know, attempts cost money, and also you have the combo game the whole time. My very first game that dealt with combo gaming is Twin Cobra. Any old school arcade shoot 'em, like 2D shooter, like the um side scrolling or vertical shooters, they have limited attempts, and you have to combo game the whole way. In fact, I don't even know why you have lives, because it's incredibly hard to recover. So you just combo game with one attempt. Like, you have extra lives, like 3 lives, but all your power-ups reset, right? So once you die, your combo is gone. So you start over. Which basically sounds like Osu. Only a game like Twin Cobra has RNG in it. Not as much RNG as one might think. Sometimes spawns are timed properly and spawned the same way back in the old school days. But yeah, combo gaming, it's rough. Alright. So this guy clearly has a mole. Thick brows. Speckled face. This is actually very well drawn. This will be a huge help. It's actually quite helpful. I mean, there's at least... Jay, remember the mole on the guy's face. That's an incredibly identifying feature. Good. Glad those art classes finally amounted to something. You took art classes for that? Okay. That's a little... And your fee, Yagami-san. I hope you go easy on me, being an old friend of Genda-sensei. How about 20,000 then? That's quite fine. I wish you the best, Yagami-san. Oh dear. Oh dear. It's that time. I'm gonna miss my Tokyo sightseeing tour if I don't hurry. She sounds like a very privileged woman. I'll let you go then, and I'll be in touch. Thank you. First thing a thief usually does is, yeah. So we go to Ebisu. Ebisu to see if they attempted to pawn off the diamond ring. So, alright. So now we need to go to Ebisu. What was the other thing? So we have Sashimi, which is, we need to go to a sushi place. I need to find something warm to trade for the jacket. And I have no idea where the heck Sana went. It's an office building. I figured it was this, but... There's another thing up here. Somewhere. Is it up here? No? Take a elevator. Explore. Okay. This might be it. Is this where Sana is? No, it's something else. Oh, it's the... Yeah, it's the other thing.
Excuse me.
Yeah, the Hayama-san, the talent agency guy. Oh, I've been waiting for you, Yagami-san. Thanks for making the trek. Please, come in. The man of the hour is right this way. The man of the hour? Yeah, he's the reason I made this request. Or I guess you could call him the problem in a lot of ways. Right then. Let's just start at the beginning. I see. I just had mixed feelings about person being annoyed that it exists. I couldn't really give them useful insight in it because it doesn't make me feel anything. It did mention placing a lot of value on ability to learn anything in some individual pace. And the fact that you could kind of run out of attempts made them feel frustrated, even though the game provided over a hundred without much effort. That's interesting. Interesting. So this game has an ability to increase the number of attempts, but the person, it's one of those I feel a reaction would be something like this if I were to role play this. Man, here's the it's a contradiction in design. Basically, like I think the game gives the false impression that they're trying to create a casual entry so you can boost the number of retries, right? But at the same time, they implemented a system to reduce the number of retries or attempts. So emotionally, this person is intuiting two different types of designs, and that can get a little confusing. So let me role play it. If I had to put my mindset in this person, why they're frustrated, it's like, you're playing, it's like, oh, this game, man, I only have 3 retries. Like, I better get better, get good, right? Start working on it. And it's like, okay. Then a few hours into the game, you realize, wait, I could just farm lives. And then I never have to worry about running out of retries. Like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And what's the freaking point of putting in a system that limits my retries if I have to go out of if I can go out of my way and just have hundreds of retries? So it's more of not an intellectual thing. To me, what I'm imagining is that type of frustration, where, for example, my first thought is like Mario games. Yeah, if you think of like Super Mario Brothers, right? At first, lives are like kind of sketch, and you have to reattempt and make sure your lives are 50. But at some point, you'll find ways to get more lives, and then it becomes a moot point. Like, so why do the game? What it feels frustrating would be something like, well, at first it seems like this is a way to force yourself to get good and whatnot, and then suddenly there's no point to it anymore. So why do you have it in the first place? So that's kind of how I'm interpreting what this guy's frustration is. And for a very emotional person, that seems very reasonable. For an intellectual person, for myself, the idea is when you get to a certain point, you no longer have the same perspective as uh when you become skilled due to a system's restrictions and then reflect upon it. It's what I usually call it the post facto thing. After the fact, things may not seem uh like it makes sense, or why is it there, or things serve purpose. So what I'm gathering from this description is that at first point this person had a certain mindset, but after playing a bunch, he became frustrated because that mindset shifted, but the person didn't take into account what changed during that mindset switch. So for me, it's kind of a like a really fast perspective switch between someone who first is not skilled and then becomes skilled at something, but their intellectual perspective didn't shift at all. Their feelings shift. So uh how do I illustrate this the best? Oh, like for example, a Souls game, right? You just mentioned Dark Souls 2. Um, when you beat a boss, so say you do a boss, right? Like, oh man, this is impossible, and man, I only got like 2 or 3 good tries in me, and then suddenly when you become skilled and you beat the boss, um, and then you beat the boss again, you're like, man, I don't even know why this boss. No one should need more than 3 tries or 4 tries, right? Because it should be that easy. So the idea is this person, it's not the one to one, it's just I'm illustrating the perspective shift. So when someone is no longer unskilled and they become skilled, it makes all the emotional take on the design and restrictions a moot point. So then you get to a point where a lot of people would get to that get good perspective where once you become skilled, you forgot that you were unskilled at some point. And this, in this case, if we're specifically talking about attempts, like for example, a game with lives, I like to use the game with lives a lot of times. You start with 3 lives and you keep playing with 3 lives. So in that way, you're playing in a system that puts pressure on you to be consistent, like combo gaming. However, when a new system, when the system opens up and allows you to soften it, as in gain more lives, it cheapens the restrictions. However, one could make an argument that a developer added abilities to create more attempts because it no longer becomes either designing relevance, as in now it's about establishing consistency with refining your skills that you've already acquired, than uh being pressured to improve rapidly. So it's kind of like you really have to talk. It really comes down to really needing to understand the game's building philosophy and the developers. On the one hand, when you have when you're being pressured to learn, right? Accelerate your learning curve with fewer attempts. When you become skilled, right? When you become skilled, your learning potential starts to peak out. And what happens is the natural, I would say, just based on your description, the developer increase the number of attempts as one becomes skilled, because when you try to get even better than a skilled point, it exponentially increases in the number of attempts to optimize it. So no, if you're in the beginning, you're focused on success, like just completion success. So 3 tries has that pressure to complete. When you're starting to refine your skills, for example, like Osu, it exponentially increases in the number of attempts to refine it. So it's no longer about completion success. It's about providing as many attempts as possible for someone to be consistently improving. So the perspective didn't shift for this guy, is what I'm saying. His intellectual, he feel like the person feels a certain way, but the intellectual side of it was not there. So that creates a cognitive dissonance. Like for example, here, a good example in RGG games is they do the smooth learning curve thing. So all their mini games, they start with super laxed. So in Droid Racing, in Droid Racing, it was really lax. Like you destroyed the competition in the beginning. While you're destroying the competition, you feel like you need less attempts. So there's your combo gaming. But while I was combo gaming, I was trying my best to refine and find wiggle room. Well, right at the top where I am now, you have to combo game the whole thing. But the combo game technically has unlimited attempts. So the idea is when you get to the top, naturally most games, in my opinion, would be designed to have more attempts. It's a natural way to encourage someone to improve because it takes a lot of attempts to improve better at the top than in the beginning. So learning curve pressure tends to be a really different state of mind than refinement. So that person's probably frustrated because they've already reached a refinement period, but they don't see the point of the learning curve pressure in the beginning, which is kind of what RPGs do quite often, where the whole limited attempts become less consequential after you become skilled at it, whether it be an action RPG or a JRPG. And the final stages tend to just take really long time, but become frustratingly less rewarding, in my opinion. Anyways, that's just my guess. I don't really know this person or Dark Souls 2 that much for matter. Just an idea. Shijima-kun. Shijima-kun. I told you, there's no smoking here. Oh, yeah. Huh? That awkward feeling. Oh, I know this building. This is the same building as Yakuza 6, The Song of Life. Akiyama dropped down from the window screen here. It was a different building before, but this is the same interior as Yakuza 6. Yeah, the tunnel vision. Yeah, I don't know the context or not, but tunnel vision can really create emotional dissonance, is what I would say. My only hot take on what I said was I was trying to find a way that this person is intellectually and emotionally feeling confused. As in, if you're playing a game and you suddenly become emotional, often it means that either they were thinking something that doesn't really is not very concordant to their feelings, or they are really that toxic. I don't know. That's kind of, I don't like to think the worst in people, as in the fair assumption that a lot of people would say is, oh, this person just complains a lot. So they just complain about everything. I mean, that might be true. I just like to treat people a lot more competent than I like to believe they're a lot more competent than that, or far more dynamic than that. But there are individuals who just simply complain a lot about everything, and that's fair. Oh, shut up, will you? I apologize, Yagami-san. You shouldn't have to see that. I mean, Yagami smokes. It's fine. Care to introduce us? This is Otoya Shijima, an artist associated with our talent agency. Okay. What kind of artist? Boy. Wait, you don't know who I am? What kind of remote mountain village are you from that you haven't heard of me? Sorry, I don't have time to watch much TV. Don't be rude, Shijima-kun. I apologize, Yagami-san. Don't sweat it. Why don't you take a seat, Ayama-san? So, what can I do for you today? Well, it's about the performance Shijima is going to be doing in Kamurocho. Performance? It would have been fine, but he's being hounded by a scandal of sorts. Of sorts? We knew he had a bad rep when we signed him, but some of his past indiscretions have come to light in recent days. So what if I used to ride motorcycles over sidewalks with my crew and stuff? Biker gang. And I mean, I guess we snatched a few things for giggles. So, reckless endangerment and theft. Oh, come on. It was more than 10 years ago. I read online that it's past the statute of limitations. Oh. Oh no. They captured it so well. It's more than 10 years ago. I read online that it's past the statute of limitations. I read online. The guy is very pure and in the very long term still takes on the challenge, but has very strict and tunnel. Yeah, I can see that. It sounds like a very emotional person. Very pure and emotional goes hand in hand. I like, and tunnel vision is, and strict also checks out. So all the, pretty much all the words you chose, someone who takes on challenge, pureness, tunnel vision, strict, those go hand in hand. They are not, they are often not mutually exclusive of each. That's also a part of why I didn't really know what to say to him, because I rarely see him complain. You rarely see him complain. That's interesting. Huh. That doesn't check out. Someone that's that's pure, takes on challenges, strict, and have maybe a propensity for tunnel vision, doesn't complain much. I find that very I find that very suspicious. He might not be complaining openly. He tends to make most fails as his own fault. That's complaining. And what I mean by that is, a complaint isn't a negative or positive thing here. Like, I don't want to make you think that complaints are positive or negative things. He's internalizing it. So that's fine. That sounds about right. So he's incredibly diligent and vigilant. That's great. It's still a form of complaint to oneself. If I fail a challenge, I wouldn't say it's, I wouldn't take it as my fault. I would say it's something I need to learn. Like, I wouldn't use those words. And when I'm failing, I don't feel like I'm failing. I'm learning. And it's a difference between saying that you lost something, but you're gaining something. I'm always gaining something. When I fail, I gain new information. So if you're talking about complaining in a sense, or frustrating in a sense, I would say that that qualifies as a complaint. I enjoy failing. Enjoying failing means, in order to enjoy failing means that I have something to learn. I wouldn't ever associate negative emotions with it. Sometimes I do get frustrated, though. Not for the same reasons. Yeah. So it's tough. I would love to see a person like that, though. It's kind of interesting. A great example would be, you know, someone we know, right? Where I know I'm very familiar with Osu gamers, and Osu gamers tend to do the same thing, especially the ones that are highly achieving. However, highly achieving people can be incredibly polite and agreeable. Highly achieving people can be like that a lot. However, it's lacking self-love. So what I mean is, while they're highly achieving, is because they're really hard on themselves, and that's fine as long as it's sustainable. when you get really, really high up, like 99th percentile, it may not be sustainable. So hopefully the challenges this person approaches gets accomplished before requiring to be 99%. Because when you're at the top, it's going to be tough. Every day you're going to get used to telling yourself, I failed and only I can improve and fix it. When it's not really a fixing thing, you're gaining something no matter what. It's just you're choosing to see if that diminished return is enough to make yourself happy. And generally for me, any experience is positive, so I rarely feel like I'm failing. And when I'm frustrated, I get to learn something about something that makes me frustrated. So if you ever see me get angry, which I do get angry, by the way, immediately after experience, I find it very humbling or very wonderful because I got angry and I learned something about it. So rarely is it a sign of fault or failures. Just as a personal different take on failure. And thought like that, I usually think of complaining as it's placing fault at external factors. Oh, okay. That's interesting. I think I would have to agree with you that most people would think that too. I think generally complaining tends to be externalized, like projected onto someone. So like if you're feeling down and you're really angry and you project it out, it's protecting you. So what happens is you're taking the blame off, right? And it's helping the person. So like it's not my fault, it's the system. And it's a really effective way to make oneself protected from the negative emotions. This person must have a really strong, pure, strict, disciplined, and incredibly, I'm gonna say, arrogant and narrow-minded perspective. But what that provides is good self-esteem, confidence in self, and an ability to overcome obstacles. And because of all of these things, this person can take on the fault, as in take on the complaints. So they don't need to project out because they have no insecurities. They just take it in. As in, I can deal with this because I don't need other people to deal with this. So you don't have to like blame something else to protect your own confidence and your insecurities. This guy is incredibly secure and confident in themselves, so they can take whatever they feel. However, the difference between, say, me and this person is that he is taking it on like it's baggage, like it's coping. I don't take it on as coping. I take it on as something positive. Oh, okay. That's interesting. Maybe I might know him. Regardless if I know him or not, I'm just speculating. All this is speculating. So for myself, I take it on because I want to. That person is taking it on as a way to compensate. So what I mean is this person probably starts at an 80, right? Excess energy. And they use some of that excess energy to deal with challenges, like being frustrated and stuff. When I get frustrated, when I get angry, I get more excited. So I enjoy doing it more. I don't see it as a negative. So like if I fail multiple times, it makes me want to do it more, as opposed to the downside of my way is I would say I cope because I need to know when to stop. If I don't stop, I can risk injury or risk developing a negative association, or I can get really tired or obsessed. So I tend to stop and tell myself, you know, it's been 2 hours. Like yesterday, I was working on the drone racing thing. On the drone racing thing, I would say I had to stop because it's been 2 hours. My performance is clearly dipping. I'm becoming less and less consistent, right? Got to take a break. And the thing about that is you're saying it's relatable, but it depends on the task. So for me, in that regards, it's another dimension of your personality. You are a disagreeable person, Worm. So you're a more disagreeable person than I am. And that's not a bad thing. It means you're more selective. So when you say it depends on a task, it means you have conditionals attached to specific tasks. I do not have any. Or I do have some, but it's a lot less. So I could say it's less dependent on the task. I would 80 to 90% of the time, what I just described applies to almost all the tasks. It's irrelevant of the conditions. There are very specific tasks that it does depend, but I wouldn't say it depends on the task for myself, because most of the time it doesn't. And that tells you about how flexible you are. So for example, what is a task that I would say it depends on the task so that it's not what I just said? Risky behavior. Because I can't do that. For example, objectively speaking, I can't engage in risky behavior and have a philosophy like that. It's inappropriate. So for example, drug abuse, gambling, yes. So, but even more so, like gambling that has no return, as in there's no point of return, like things like a really risky behavior. We're talking about very specific risky behavior, like drinking a lot, you know, alcohol abuse, like risking those kind of things. Those would be the extreme cases. Again, the things I'm describing are 90 to 80% of the time for myself. Some people are like 50-50, maybe even 40-30, where you have situations where like, oh, it depends if it's someone important to me and someone not important to me. For example, that's a really good one. The conditional for how much I care, how much I don't care, how much I like, how much I don't like. However, for me, the ones that I just named are incredibly typical for a lot of people, and they're not a condition for myself. I enjoy failing, quote unquote, failing. I'm going to use the word learning. Just substitute your own words. I enjoy learning things I hate, whatever they might be. I don't really know what they are at the moment. Like, dislike, indifferent, all the same. If I'm learning something from them, it's the same factor. However, for most people, if they don't like something, it's not a learning process anymore. It's a coping process. If they like it, it's a learning process. So you can really read into someone when they become frustrated uncharacteristically and not frustrated characteristically. However, in the end, they can still end up learning from both process, and they can either learn to like the thing they didn't like or just reject it entirely. And then the things they like, they can learn to hate it too. So all that does happen over time. And in this case, a lot of situations when it comes to video games is often they thought they like it, but they learned to hate it. Yet they still learned. It's just over time, love-hate relationship developed. The alternative for me is I hope that video games are more like you're indifferent, as in you have no idea what's going on. It's not interesting. And then you learn something from it, and that learning builds a likability to it. That's usually not what happens in games anymore. People buy games with expectations. So that person, that frustration, they're really powerful. They can take on the challenge and they can deal with it. It's an active challenge to them, and they can internalize it because they had expectations, and that expectation didn't overwhelm what they have. So they took on a challenge that they clearly understand they could take it regardless of how frustrating it can become, like their bottom line. So that's a very healthy way of playing video games if you like your perspective that way. For me, any video game is a positive gain in energy. So I'm not playing video games because I need to feel better. I'm playing video games because I want to learn something. So I'm not feeling bad when I'm playing a video game, or the video game is not here to serve to make me feel good. I don't necessarily have to feel good. I will learn to feel good about a video game or about an experience, if that makes sense. So generally speaking, my selection for video games is whatever catches my eyes at first. I don't focus on what are the odds I don't like a video game, which is very important to a lot of people. They either look for what they want to look for, or they're looking for the chances of being turned off. I'm just looking for an experience, which is how I approach life most of the time. So it could lead to very, very different emotions. I would say I have the opposite problem, which is this is a trade-off, right? It seems like me and this guy might have opposing thoughts. So what are the dangers? Just to give a little disclaimer about my perspective. One of the dangers is that I wouldn't prioritize. So if I don't prioritize, then I wouldn't necessarily be able to achieve higher than someone else. For example, if I always consider everything as a learning process, I don't have a goal in mind. So for example, it's dangerous because you might not get tasks finished, like things just don't get done, games don't get finished, or your experience ends up not being invested. So a comment that someone might come at me for is, well, you didn't invest enough effort, so you wouldn't know the whole experience of the game. And that's true. I would absolutely agree with that. My only counter argument to that is, while you're spending a disproportionate amount of time investing in learning, I don't know, 99% of Like a Dragon, I have redistributed that other 20% you spend more than I do into something else that fills that gap. So in the end of the day, you are productive however much of the time. I am also productive. It's just my productivity is divided. So neither one of us is lazier than the other. We just choose to divide our time differently. And that's kind of the way perspective works too. So while that person spends a lot of time, in my opinion, coping with challenges, I spend most of my time finding challenges. Challenges that I didn't think I need. In fact, most challenges in video games are considered extra to me. If you are a happy person, most challenges in life are extra. Like the challenges you voluntarily take on are extra in your life, not necessary. So in this both case, we might both be happy people and we've already sustained our necessary happiness. Only this person chooses to look at video games as things the person wants to do and complete. I look at video games as just experiences that may or may not end in completion. Because for me, there's no guarantee if I start a game, I'm going to be able to complete it. Because I don't go out of my way to say I must complete a game when I start it. I do my best. Eventually, I'm going to encounter a game that is beyond my necessity for investment. Like, for example, Osu. I put down Osu, right, for quite some time now. I have no necessity to prove that I can be a 4-digit or a 3-digit in Osu. I played it to gain experience and the learning process. I have no aspirations of seeing where I was going to go with my skill limit. When diminished return kicks in to my arbitrary attention span, I move on to another thing. It's kind of to embrace my my spurious thoughts. My mind wanders a lot, so I try not to have a lifestyle that will make it worse for me emotionally. So like I think about a lot of things, I get distracted a lot of times, and I'm always invested in a lot of people's perspective. So if I trap myself in a lifestyle that forces me to hyper focus on things, it will make me really bad. Oh, don't get me wrong, I will still do that. And it's gonna be easier, right? Later on because of my because of decay and stuff, right? So I will get back to that at some point. Paying back Sun's like gentleman's agreement. However, I just want to emphasize that when it comes to games and learning process, I have core skills, the 20%, right? The 10% to 20%. Those are the skills that are unconditional, and I am very, very proficient at those skills. Those are the skills that I work on. It's ironic, but I would say I don't think most people think of it this way, but the vast majority of my skills are extra. They're not useful. Like what I mean by not useful is they're not passive skills. Passive skills are skills you acquire to deal with passive challenges. Passive challenges are things like eating, sleeping, making money, having a career, feeling good about yourself, anxiety, things that are you don't have a choice. You have to deal with them. So when I would say one of the ways to test if you are an open-minded person or a narrow-minded person, and like to what extent, is ask yourself when you list down your skills, right? Just make a column, right? Make 2 columns, passive skills and active skills. Passive skills are for passive challenges. Active skills are for active challenges. Passive, you don't have a choice. Active, you do choose. So all the things that life skills tend to be passive. That's what most people refer to as life skills anyways. And then you have active skills, are all the things you accept. So you accept to play soccer or football. You accept to play tennis. You accept to play games. You learn a skill actively. But those active skills, those specific active skills, can overlap with your passive skills if you choose. Most of the time, the people who play video games are gaining extra skills because they want to escape from working on passive skills. Escapism is a natural state of mind for that. When you play a video game, you're escaping from all the skills that you don't want to work on or habitually stay away from. For example, when you escape, you're escaping from anxiety of the job. So what do? Well, you definitely don't want to play a video game that reminds you of the job you have to do. So that's escapism. And for me, I don't play video games for escapism most of the time. I actually play video games to work on my passive skills. So most of the time when I'm like talking about Japanese culture and whatnot, it's actually relevant to my actual life. So like intellectually, skill wise, most of the things I practice here on stream while I'm playing a video game or reading and stuff deals with communication. Communication is a life skill. So I put all my chips in practicing life skills in video games. So when I'm using video games, yes, I'm acquiring all the extra skills. Like the vast majority of skills are just active skills that I acquire. Or maybe I meet someone who loves to do speed runs or something. I'm acquiring knowledge for an extraneous thing that I just find interesting. So here's the contrast. 80 to 90% of the time, I would say I'm practicing a passive skill. However, 80 to 90% of the time, I'm actually participating in an activity that's an active challenge. It sounds a little complicated, but it's a lot easier if I pulled up and like drew a diagram. Generally speaking, the hot take here is I play and do hobbies because it's relevant in developing my life skills. However, because I do that, I acquire a lot of random skills, like skills that aren't really that important, honestly. Like, for example, does understanding the nuance of the statute of limitation of misdemeanors in Japanese law, is that a relevant life skill? That detail and whatnot is a relative skill or knowledge check for my passive life, like my life, right? No, not really. How that relates to the United States system and how that is portrayed and viewed from a Japanese person to an American is relevant to my life. So I try my best to relate everything to either my knowledge or my passive skills in real life. So then what happens is any video game, any experience is important. When I fail something, in the game, it's teaching me something that I could use. I'm trying to use that experience to teach me something that I can use in real life. Like how to deal with failure, for example. Or how to use failure to my advantage. One way to use failure to your advantage is that when I fail something, I try to find why is it I fail? How is it I fail? And then tell myself, well, if I were to be successful, how can I change the system to better fit my skill set? And all these are thought experiments. Not necessarily they should be that way. That's what it taught me. So for example, a great example is I say this a lot in this game, but I'm really terrible at tailing people. And I make a pretty poor detective. Like my skill sets make it very difficult for me to be a detective because everything I learned about this game is that I'm very not great with incomplete information, especially incomplete information that is emotionally compromised. There's a lot of emotionally compromised decision making in this game. So I learned that this system is making me behave in a way that I don't typically behave. So I learned my weakness and my strength. Do I want to improve on that weakness? It's my choice. Do I think it's necessary to my passive skills? Maybe. So the more information you learn, whether you fail or succeed, or beat a game very quickly, or beat a game very slowly, or it seems very difficult, or it seems very easy, in all those cases, finding meaning in them deals with how it relates back to my skills, like my passive skills. So while I learn a lot of random skills, wouldn't expect you to even slightly struggle with deduction. I would struggle with deduction, unfortunately. Well, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing, right, Worm? My deduction is grounded in realistic writing. So it tells me that this game is challenging my narrow-mindedness. I don't know if you know what I mean. Specifically, like, if I specialize in deduction, that means there's a very likelihood that if deduction is presented in a different way, I might not be good at it, for example. So for when you become specialized, so I would say I'm pretty decent at deduction. However, I'm not a detective, right? I don't deduce things because I'm a detective. I don't usually encounter life and death situations or talk about criminals and criminal motives. I deduce other things. So in a way, I didn't stay broad enough to be decently deducing in any sense. I usually use deduction most of my time in people who have intellectual problems to solve, like where information can be collected in a controlled state, right? This type of deduction involves intuition, gut feelings, emotions, you know, like what I mean, like this type of writing doesn't lend to the type of deduction that I would say I'm decent at. So I do struggle with this, and it checks out. Do I want to be better at this? Probably not. It doesn't suit my like, it doesn't necessarily suit my personal life. So for example, it doesn't help me make myself better at what I want to do, which is be agreeable and be open-minded. In fact, this type of deduction tends to be more direct, certain, and making the best, like making a call based on incomplete information. And generally, deductions are great for that, to cut shortcuts, but my deduction style tends to need confirmation, lots of affirmation. So it's kind of like Yagami, where he wants the truth. Like, he really wants the truth, but the thing is, he wants the truth for his emotional pride, like his respect and his honor. I don't do deductions like that most of the time. Like, for example, he deduces things based on people's cynicism or their pessimism or their past history and stuff. I really can't do that. Like, not particularly. And a lot of times, to give another disclaimer, is that most of my deductions deal with people who are emotionally compromised. And what I mean by emotionally compromised is the nice thing about... This is going to be a weird way to phrase this, but emotionally compromised people tend to, you might be surprised, tend to behave in a more predictable manner, in my opinion, because I spend more time in that situation than one that deals with a non-emotionally compromised situation. So I'll give you an example. If I met a very intelligent person, let's just say I meet Yagami, there are so many things that are going in his mind when he's not emotionally compromised, I can't possibly deduce what he's thinking. Like, not as well. But if he's angry, you bet he's angry at someone doing a wrongdoing. So if you know what I mean. So like when you were talking about that other guy who was frustrated, it's a bit easier for me to deduce that because I spend more time focusing on looking at the patterns between emotionally compromised situations in otherwise healthy people. I don't spend most of my time where, like, what's a great example? Trying to figure out what's going on in like Sherlock Holmes's mind. I have no idea. He could be thinking about 8 billion things. It doesn't give anything away. What's a great example of how terrible my deduction skills are? I'm bad at poker. I'm terrible at poker. I'm terrible at any game where it deals with hiding your intent. So, and you would think someone who's good at deduction and observation will be great at, like, you know, calling people out on like poker and their body language and stuff, but I clearly don't focus on those things. A great fun joke or meme is scientist who tries to solve a problem, like a simple problem, in the most complicated way. And that's kind of how I feel when a specialist or generalist becomes specialized in a skill so much that they forgot to keep it simple sometimes. And this game humbled me like nobody's business. Like the first time we were tailing, you know, the tailing missions, I think one of the biggest criticisms against Judgment is that, oh, the combat feels good. You know, like what I mean is the combat feels good to most people. And then, but what was a big criticism is the detective skills are too half-baked, as in they're too straightforward. And for me, they were so straightforward that I found so difficult. As in, like, they are so streamlined, you know, just really restrictive that I fought against it the entire time. And then so I start overthinking, like, can I hide here? Can I not hide here? It's like the timer goes off and I freak out and then run into the open, that kind of thing. So it's a great humbling experience and it helps me. It was a great learning experience. I didn't fail. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't fail. I didn't do it really well either. And yesterday, the drone races, I thought I was pretty good, like understand my awareness and stuff, and then immediately got slapped down. And turns out I overcomplicated something, which I'll probably do later today. I definitely overcomplicated something. So all these things are why video games are amazing, because video games, if you're truly paying attention to yourself a lot of times, or maybe if you're playing PvP, you can try to gather some information while interacting with someone else, is that there are no risks, as in there are very low risks in failing. And that's what makes video games a great exploratory ground for developing life skills. However, big asterisks. If you spend most of your time thinking video games as a hobby, in my opinion, you have psychologically prepared yourself to compartmentalize skills only to a hobby. As in, what I mean is, if you think it's a hobby, you have already internalized that the skill for those hobbies are just that. They stay a hobby. They won't be able to provide passive skills since you expect them to only offer active skills. And it comes with mindset, right? If you're only looking to practice the skill that you're looking for, you will naturally not be open or looking for what skills it can teach you. And for me, I think one of the best things I can tell you is video games. This is gonna be fun. I often tell this to people, but that's not what most kids discover these days. Video games had taught me how to control my anger. Like, just think about that for a moment. In today's age, if you ask anyone under the age of 20, I think I can reasonably say that the first 3 things a kid learned from video games, within those top 3 things, they would not say it's a way to help you manage your anger. What I mean by that is learn the skills to manage your anger. Generally, since video games are a form of escapism, it's a way to release your anger. As in, it helps you express your anger, which is safe, healthy, until we start thinking about the major type of video games we play today, which is PvP. It's when more experienced gamers could easily agree with you. I would say that's why I said below 20, if you know what I mean. So when you mean more experienced gamer, you mean gamers that bridge multi-generational gaps and they didn't grow up exclusively with video games as a coping mechanism. So what I mean is, I don't think more experienced gamers are gonna agree with you if they, let's say, played 15 years of games and they start at the age of 5. But that would make them within the 20 range. I would say a gamer that lived in a time where they have a professional life, as in they're not experienced gamers, they're experienced people who also play video games. So like when you're referring to, you might be thinking about like some of the younger gamers who ended up learning how to control their anger and stuff, like, but that's not due to the gaming or being experienced with gaming. It's largely due to the skills that they need to learn to make their career as a gamer or something, their hobby as a gamer, be manageable. So what I mean is you could probably think of, let's say, a toxic gamer, a formerly toxic gamer. It's other life circumstances that branched away from specifically the skills that are in games that place pressure and restriction on their experiences. And those experiences tend to be the ones that allow them to manage their anger, because it makes gaming more sustainable. I don't think necessarily that this is a technicality. I still agree with you, because if they hadn't experienced those games, they wouldn't have discovered their anger. And without expressing and experiencing their anger and what it can do, it wouldn't lead to all the other circumstances. And that's kind of what I mean by, if you express your anger towards something that is forgiving, like playing a single player game, for example, it can lead to self-discovery. But right before you said that, I was going to lead into the dominant form of gaming today is PvP. So while I say this, I would say, yes, more experienced gamers would agree with me about the anger thing, but those more experienced gamers are in a really small minority. I'm going to say even 15%, while 85% of them are able to express their anger, but the dominant form of gaming is PvP. And unfortunately, that is no longer a safe environment to express anger. You will get mixed feedback. Without consistent feedback and consistent results from expressing your anger, those individuals tend to not be able to intuit the noise that it comes in. So they tend to choose what they want to accept in that noise. For example, haters will be haters. I'm just good at the game. They suck at the game. There's no reason I should care about that. So they suck, but man, boy, it's frustrating when I hear bad players complain about being bad. So they choose to accept that they are good while expressing their frustration. But now it's in an environment that involves other people. During my generation, PvP is not the dominant form of video gaming. It is the exception, actually. So when I say games is a safe place with low consequences, it was speaking in a way of isolation and being alone, as in you're projecting to yourself through the game. Unfortunately, now it's not really that safe anymore to express anger through gaming as an escapism. So what has PvP become? Well, in PvP games, imagine if you went to work and your work is a form of escapism to express your frustration and anger in your own time. Well, that's what we're describing PvP gaming. So in order to make sense of this, what I mean is, for better or for worse, to become comfortable with not being frustrated and annoyed in PvP gaming, one has to understand that if the vast majority of people who play video games are escaping, which I think most gamers don't have trouble agreeing with, most people who play video games is trying to escape. And then you choose to play a PvP game. Think about what majority of your opponents are doing when they're going into a PvP game. They're escaping. Escaping is a lift of inhibitions. It's the ability to express frustration, anger. I'm gonna make a sunshine and rainbow conjure to express their privilege or happiness as well. But what it's doing is, in a gaming environment, it's liberating the chains that are making life so restrictive. The passive challenges in life is not great. So you come to a video game to do that. Unfortunately, since PvP is the dominant form of video games, everyone you meet, the vast majority of people you meet, is basically that. So you're saying it's basically a pre-selected group of pent-up people? Yes. For better or for worse. So what I mean is, pent-up can be both negative or positive, but it still triggers everyone else. So for example, I just got a promotion. Now I'm a millionaire. I want to go to the video game and strut around because I spent most of my time in real life oh, I can't tell anyone I'm a millionaire. I'm doing well, but where do I celebrate? How do I express this? I got all this pent up, but I need to be I need to be professional, calm, do my work. I get on my video game and I start bragging. Right? That's the idea. It's a pre-selected group of a place where you can be freely expressing, right? The downside of that is when you put it in a PvP format, everyone is expressing their opinions and everyone is strongly expressing their emotions and whatnot. It's supposed to be a safe place. But it's no longer a private place. You legitimately substituted the workplace for your PvP lobby. And if you think about it this way, right, in this perspective, and you play PvP, you can sit there and say, you know what? Good for you, man. The person that's bragging in the corner. I'm glad you have a place that you can brag to everyone how successful you are. And then this guy's like, I'm sorry you feel so angry, but just let it out. It's okay. You can't hurt my feelings because I know you came here to just let it all out. Actually, the more toxic a person is, it's likely they're escaping from a lot of toxicity. And unfortunately, though, when you collect this much of raw energy in a medium, everyone's gonna be at each other's throats because it's the place where they can express everything. So to me, I would say I'm in like the 10 to 15% where I sit there and I just watch people do it. Because all I can tell myself is this is probably the only place that they can do it with the least amount of consequences. And even then, it still sucks because they're hurting other people and they might be hurting themselves in return, right? But it is still maybe a slightly better place than doing it out at your job or out in public or whatnot. So I can still see the benefits of gaming. The only downside now is that the major form of video gaming literally involves interacting with other people again. So now our perspective has to shift. I don't know when that's going to happen. I don't know when people are going to normalize that, where now the internet is a place of consequences. The internet is a place that's an extension of real life. And I can almost say this, that most people agree now, online life is an integral to most people who are struggling with this. As in, struggling why PvP really makes them angry every single second of their life. Why does everyone feel like they're toxic buttholes? Why do everyone feel like they're constantly bragging and egomaniacs in video games during PvP? You have to ask yourself, you agreed to yourself probably that video game is a form of escapism. And all the people you are talking about are pre-selected because they're there for the same reasons as you are. Just they have different problems and baggages in their life, and they are expressing raw emotions. So here's another hot take. If you're not someone like me who's playing a solo RPG game or a solo game and find it just as engaging as a PvP setting, then you're also looking for affirmation. Because in a single player game, the only affirmation you're getting is from yourself. You're not getting it from anyone else. So there's another pre-selection. So if you're likely playing solo player games and getting gratification from it, you're pre-selecting yourself as one of those people who don't require affirmation from someone else. And then there are other pre-selections, but we're talking about pre-selection basically. I think most of the stuff I talk about in terms of psychology is deducing the pre-selection group. So why they are here, why people are here, and understanding that helps so much with accepting people, in my opinion. Like, it helps me explain and be trying to be as helpful. Like, if I know why someone hates me, it's so comforting because then I know how not to make them hate me or hate me less, or even accept that they just hate me for who I am. At least I can tell them, I understand why you hate me. Let me explain. And that's still better than pretending they're wrong or not entitled to their opinion or saying, I don't understand you, kind of thing. I don't want, like, my ultimate goal in the life skills of playing video games and culture and all this stuff, and what we're talking about now and digressing, is that I try to make less enemies in my life. In fact, I think every time I help someone or make someone's day 5 minutes brighter is a win. Because every minute that I make myself feel better, I want to know that everyone else can do that for themselves too. And knowing why things happen from a human perspective really helps. Like, helps quite a lot. Like, to the point where losing is winning. Because when someone feels good that I lost, it means they feel better. I don't really need to feel better anymore. Like, that's the whole difference. And the drawback is it makes me a terrible PvP player. So if you're wondering, like, here's a great example. How do I'm a maximize my time kind of guy, right? And you people probably see, like, why don't you play PvP games? Like, well, let's think about my mentality right here. What I just described. It makes me a terrible PvP player. And do I want to become a better PvP player? No, I don't. It means sacrificing pretty much my entire outlook. So yeah, I am narrow-minded in that way. I'm so specialized in concerning with another person that if I play a PvP game, I will basically just lose intentionally. And then what does that do? Well, it hurts my team, whoever I'm on. It helps the other team, but I'm still making enemies, right? Like, I'm the underperforming guy that is so concerned about the other guy. So if I wanted to overperform and make my team feel good, then the other team loses and they feel worse. And the reason why I'm using that scenario is you could make an argument, but what about sportsmanly like conduct, you know, like good rivalries? Like, if you're good, it drives the other team to be good, and it drives the other team to be good. But let's talk about this for a moment. Just a split moment. Video games are not necessarily a choice anymore. If you ask a person who's playing PvP, they're probably going to describe video games like, I need video games. Video games make me happy. Video games are part of my daily routine. Video games are lifestyle. It's a little different from if you ask an athlete what they're doing. So when an athlete pre-selects themselves into like tennis and soccer and, you know, football and stuff, right? Sportsmanly like conduct is the significant majority. I would say 70 to 30. 30% would be like potentially, you know, the too hardcore, maybe toxic and whatnot. But generally speaking, when you're thinking about that sports, it's a different environment than video games. But we use sports as like physical sports as a metric to measure the tendency of sportsmanlike conduct in video games. But let's just say that when you play tennis, you're not saying my life sucks and now I want to take out my anger in tennis. So there is a little bit of dissonance there. Video games is incredibly accessible. It's a bigger, wider audience. There are no pre-selection conditions. There are less heavy pre-selection conditions. What's a physical aptitude that tennis has to pre-select for? Well, money, physical body, commitment, location. There are a lot more strenuous commitment selection selection there. You have to meet face to face. You have to participate. You have to know people. You have to network. You need sponsorships, right? Like professionalism. There is an organization, right? An organization that has many years of regulation. So all that creates a pre-selection pressure on the people. So when they say, I'm going to become a professional tennis player, it comes with a lot of commitment and responsibilities. I'm not going to say that esports can't become that. It can. Just now we're thinking about an incredibly larger accessible audience. And I'm going to argue that professional audience, the professional pre-selection is a minor population than the casual audience. And the casual audience is there to relieve stress. When a professional tennis player enters a court in a competitive tournament, they're not there to relieve stress. They're there to perform. And when they perform, it comes with a lot of rules. And those rules enforces sportsmanlike conduct against, whatever they really want to do. And in esports, especially in PvP, like just casual PvP, it's like I describe this quite a bit, like bowling alleys. I used to bowl, right? When you go to an amateur tournament or amateur game nights, everyone do their thing, everyone's doing the same, it's restricted, it's polite, belligerence is non-tolerated. But what regular PvP is equating to is when you go to a bowling alley in the off hour and you see this goober sliding down the lane, chasing after the ball, or you see this other person who threw the ball and almost snapped the $100 gate on the automatic ball on the automatic pin resetter. That's what you're looking at. So when you think about the PvP space, you're thinking about recreation, not competition. And I understand, yes, PvP is competitive. It is inherently competitive, but it is as competitive of an environment with no rules. Until you become professional, don't treat it like a professional thing. It's an intellectual dissonance, as in it's a knowledge check. The perspective is warped. If you feel like you're behaving like a professional, you have to put yourself in a professional ring, not in a recreational one. So when people have a really love-hate relationship with PvP and they want to become professional, the road to become a professional is to be able to appreciate and play along with recreation. Where recreation no longer hampers you, then you have elevated yourself into a professional. So, for example, I had to graduate from science and not talk about how hypotheses, you have to form your experiments around hypothesis driven stuff, because that's what a recreational person would do. It's an unskilled person, is an amateur, someone who have not delved long enough to do that. And that was me. I was that kid. I have to start foundationally. And eventually I moved to the sphere of professionalism, which has all the other things, right? All the things that some people might think is great, but it comes with trade-offs. So here's one. When you become a professional, you can't goof around, right? No goofing around. Those days that you feel bad, suck it up. So you give up all those laxities. And those laxities are why you have someone shouting at the top of their lungs in mics and making your ears bleed and dropping like F-bombs everywhere and whatnot. And here's the thing, what I want to tell you guys, at least for myself, and I'm not trying to be condescending, or it can come off as condescending. When I see two kids yelling at each other because they don't want to admit they're the ones underperforming or something like that, I see two kids trying to just offload all their baggage. And it's cute, in my opinion. I think it's endearing and they're being unapologetic about it. But at the same time, it kind of sucks that there's that type of anger and that type of emotion when it's a lens into those people. Like, they are very angry in life right now. And when they come to video games and they express that, it's a projection of what they're trying to bottle up when they're not doing that. So yeah, it puts a bittersweet smile on my face, in my opinion. When I see toxic people online, all I can think about is, well, if you have to be incredibly toxic and channel that energy into something, I guess it might as well be a video game, as opposed to like going outside and decking someone, the first person they see. So there is a silver lining. It's just a bittersweet moment to me. I find it incredibly endearing that there are people who are streaming, who are in their own way expressing how angry and frustrated they are of things they don't understand or whatnot, because it's incredibly protective and therapeutic. It's unfortunate now that the normalized medium to do this is by interacting with another person that you can hurt a lot, or interacting with millions of people that you can hurt indirectly. So in a way, it's become ironically even more dangerous now. And that's what I'm scared of most of the time in terms of like Twitch, YouTube, influencers. It's actually become even safer, in my opinion. And I recently came to this realization that I caught myself being surprised that I would recommend that someone just go outside and talk to 2 or 3 people. Because online, what you do, it haunt you for the rest of your life. And it has a 0 entry, right? It has a 0 entry, as in pre-selection's at 0. But the sky is the limit. So what you say online is no longer that thing where, oh yeah, go online, use your anonymity, and then express yourself so that when you go outside and interact with people, you're healthier for that matter. Now it's the opposite. What you slip up on the internet could be transcribed and communicated to millions of people. It can haunt you forever. You can be successful and it can ruin your career later, right? That type of thing. So now I'm starting to worry that there's no guidelines that protect both the person and the company. So first, the company is going to try to protect themselves. And then hopefully through that regulation, there is ways to condition and normalize people to set a bottom line. Like, make people aware that, oh yeah, this is, okay, our game here, this is your private space. If you want to be incredibly just want to let it out and here are the rooms that you can compete in that has no restrictions on language. And then here are rooms that you can learn to become a professional in whatever game you're playing. So what it does is it creates rules and expectations so that they don't carry liability. That hasn't happened yet. All this stuff hasn't happened yet. It has happened in the real world, like the offline world. All this stuff has happened in the offline world. Your home, for example. You're yelling around, you're punching bags in your home. Fair enough. Like, you got a punching bag, let it go. You get to work. Those are the rules. There's no separation yet. And all I can see right now is that online has become so promiscuous that it is an unsafe place now. And that paradigm hasn't shifted for people's perspective. So what I'm saying here is a constant encouragement to understand that, honestly, right now, the most reasonable and least pre-selected group of people that will help you in life are not online. And that hurts my soul to say, in my opinion. I think it's great that online for a while, I would say for a while, it's been the place where hard to find people can find other hard to find people. I still think that's true. So if you look in the I don't want to say Reddit, but the sub groups, if you find you're a minority, like, I don't know, 15%, and you looked at all the stuff, it helps. The internet still connects people with hard to find people that are very hard to find in, offline, right? Because the chance of people meeting in that very circumstance is created virtually online. It can't be easily replicated by circumstance in geography and physical presence. However, nowadays, if you're looking for a stable person, if you needed to take a gamble and just say hi to a random person, and that person will be well-rounded enough to not yell at you for being weird or yell at you for being not understanding, and you're looking for an understanding person, that person's probably your neighbor. And hopefully that neighbor has a member that's offline. Because those people, they've already pre-selected themselves. They chose not to spend most of the time online because they're not practicing escapism. So if you were really down in the dumps, right? Like if you need help and stuff, actually nowadays, I would even argue if you have nowhere to go, getting offline is one of the first places. You would look for someone outside because those people aren't coming online for escapism. There's a big asterisk though. If you know how to find a professional online who happens to work offline most of the time, that would be a goat. So like that's the convenience of both. Like if you can't get in touch with someone who spends most of the time offline, but they made themselves available online, because you have to remember to keep in mind that the vast majority of people who come online to escape, they want to feel better. They want to feel. I got a old school boomer version of this. So before online, we had other forms of escapism. Okay, going to the movies, going to the pool, like the community pool, or what's another gathering place? The bar. Okay, bar. Maybe going swimming, like the beach. We'll say the beach. Bar, beach, and theater. When I was younger, my first perspective is, dude, like I was that guy who's like closed in, shut in. I was socially awkward. And I'm watching my movie, like I finally get to go to the theater and I'm watching my movie, right? But then there's all these people like shouting and cheering and talking and having a great time. And all I can think about is it's incredibly frustrating. Why can't I watch the movie like I want to, like peace and quiet? Like, well, here's the thing. Why are you going to the theater? So for me, when I was young, a pep, and not worldly enough to understand other people's perspective or empathize, I thought people go to theaters to watch the movie, just the movie. But really, people go to the theater to escape. Now, here's the thing. There are rules in the theater, right? Like, please be quiet, be mindful of other people. But at the same time, now when I go to the theater, which is not very often, but when I do, and I see someone like shouting and having a great time, it's like, good for you. You came out, you paid to have a good time. You know what? I'm gonna cheer and clap at the same time you are, because I want to feel good like that too. And it's no longer coming from a perspective of narcissism, like inwardly looking. That those people actually taught me how to enjoy movies better. Like, what I mean by better is more than just myself. So now when every once in a while during Halloween, I go watch Rocky Picture Horror Show. There's a tradition in the United States where like people just cheer and sing along to the movie and whatnot. I do that because that's why people go to the theater during Halloween, to watch a movie that's like 40 years old. Actually, I'm not sure if it's 40 years old. It might be close. So the idea is being able to understand what the pre-selection is can help you either participate or accept. It doesn't necessarily, it might not help you feel less angry or less frustrated, but intellectually it can help you. So that's the long digression on pre-selection. And pre-selection does deal with human psychology, and it also makes it makes pretty much everything feel bittersweet to me, especially the online space. You watch a YouTube short, this guy is saying, wow, that's crazy, and they upload a YouTube short, and then there's a person says, well, that's not too impressive, I do this all the time. It's like, well, clearly that person came here to not be reminded about what they do on a daily job, but they got recommended it, so now they act like a gatekeeper, right? It's understandable. But then someone responds like, dude, man, not everyone is like you. Usually it comes with like, not everyone's an American comment, and it really didn't have anything to do with American, but that's kind of like the standard meme. A foreigner would comment like, well, not everyone lives in the United States and do this. And then I'm like, okay, well, that's a foreigner who came to not be reminded about Americans because maybe their job and outside constantly reminds them about Americans, like news and politics and stuff. And now when they come here, it's like, oh, great. Now it's another American strutting their stuff. It's like, well, let's think about it. What is the vast majority of content creators in the United States? I mean, on YouTube, they're Americans. What are the chances that an algorithm is going to suggest an American person who's making American remarks, well, they're there to escape that, and now they get reminded of that. And what I mean by that is they weren't escaping because they're surrounded by Americans. They're escaping because they don't want to be reminded about how other people disagree with them, right? And then what happens is you come online and you realize the vast majority of your audience are going to disagree with you. That's one of the most inherent parts of how I feel online could be the companies, right? The companies may be able to increase their customer satisfaction by appealing and collectively creating and supporting more diverse content creators. And yes. Before we get carried away, I'm not suggesting it will solve everything or anything like that. I'm saying for those people who feel like, oh man, I don't want to see another American take on Russian culture. I want to see a Russian person talk about Russian culture. Why can't YouTube recommend that to me? Well, the downside of sampling size is that we have to think about what is the pre-selection for content creators online. Let's just think about the idea that YouTube is an American corporation, which is owned by Google, which is an American corporation. An American corporation tends to be run by people who are coincidentally, if not intentionally, resonating with American people. So then their philosophies, their business models, and their structure, language, all will be more attractive to American people. So the vast majority of the people on that platform will likely be American. And it sucks, and I'm saying this not necessarily as an American, but also as a Chinese person. And then yesterday I talked about culturalism, right? Or 2 days ago, I talked about culturalism. And as much as I want someone to pre-select for Chinese things, China has their own network. And they have their own cultural needs that is depicted on their own platform. I mean, they have their own hardware and technology now and their own closed system. So do I want to jump over there? Well, Chinese people also prefer Mandarin. So I can't really do that against my wishes. However, YouTube has made a effort to encourage Asian Americans and make it like, you know, a compelling argument to not just go be a physician and a doctor and an educator offline, but perhaps even an educator online. So now I can possibly bump into, I don't know, a Chinese American. And that is the closest thing I'm going to get. And that's what I have to expect, right? So here's why I'm talking about this. So let's just say it's not a foreigner. Well, Americans yell at each other too, okay? So say it's like, oh yeah. Sorry, I'm going to name drop, not sponsored by the way. McDonald's is where you can get a good cheap hamburger for cheap because I can't afford it. Or like I can't afford other good things. And then someone just comes in, like another American comes in, it's like, well, you can just cook it for less. Those are two different Americans from two different backgrounds. Like, well, yeah, you can cook it for less if you weren't working 3 jobs like the person that said it. Yeah, and McDonald's ain't cheap anymore. And that's coming from a different American, right? Like McDonald's ain't cheap anymore, but sure as heck the cheapest thing in New York City. Like things like that. So pre-selection. And for me personally, pre-selection would be oh my gosh, all you Americans like think this way. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, oh man, all you Americans think that burgers were invented in the United States. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm American, so it's tough. You got to know the pre-selection, right? So when I make content, I guess, I don't know if I will ever make content to pass off as culturalism, right? Like I'm not going to do that on an online space. I will not generally go with the idea that I tell people what to do, what they should or should not do. I will share, you know, what I do, how I think, maybe occasionally say what I'm going to do or what I'm going to practice. And then if, you know, say a gatekeeper shows up and says, you're doing it all wrong, it's like, that's fair. I didn't say I wanted to be good at it. It's like, well, you're going to injure yourself. It's like, it's okay. I understand the risks. I really appreciate that you went out of your way to concern yourself with me. However, I did make the disclaimer that I'm staying within the safety limits. I'm not trying to be the best. I just want to learn from my mistakes and learn safely. This goes into digression of one YouTube short that I saw recently. And even with the greatest intentions, this is what I call toxic compassionism, or toxic compassion. A lot of times is someone who is incredibly considerate, but at the same time remove the risks for someone else. The thumbnail was of like a really low quality, like what I mean by low quality, like really low res, right? Like a 7020p 30 frame feedback face camera of a kid who's kind of hefty. So maybe a kid like 12 years old who still has their baby weight, like their adolescent weight. It's not guaranteed that they're going to be that heavy when they go through adolescence. It's definitely a prepubescent kid, maybe 13, I would say, and posting a video of themselves. I think 13 with a parent guardian is of it, like you can do that. So this kid, what they did was they were doing a YouTube short series where they do 1 squat a day and try to increase the number of squats every day from then on. And the reason why it came up on my YouTube feed is I'm a man of microdosing. I love incredibly minimalistic minimum unit lifestyle habit creations. It's not for performance, it's for lifestyle, it's for maintenance. So this kid here, you could see that of all the things I know a lot about calisthenics, and I do it myself. So this kid did a squat, and I saw a lot of things that are a little concerning, you know, like the heels coming up, forward tilts. It looks like that kid might have a tilt on their low back, shoulders are, you know, like not balanced. But this is the kid's first squat. Probably perfectly have the body that will be able to take that progression and whatnot, and I like to think, this is presumptuous of me, but there's someone who's keeping track of the kid's health. So this kid might actually naturally intuit these things as he goes, because he's starting with a very low increment. Now, instead of getting your mindset into this kid, like I'm trying to rationalize, how safe is it for this kid? Like, that's really great. What are the kid's motivations? Why is the kid taping themselves? Like, you can explain, like, I have a bunch of theories. I go with the most one that tidies up what this kid is doing. So this kid just did 1 squat. It was his first video. 10 seconds. That's it. It cuts off immediately. That was it. But then this cuts off, but it's someone else's video. So it's an influencer's video. And this person might be a professional calisthenics person. I have no idea. I haven't seen this person before. It cuts to this guy, and it puts this kid's video on. This pauses the kid's video right at the top, and this guy says, you know, carefully, kindly, like what maybe something that I might say, it's great that you're, hello there, little one. It's great that you have enthusiasm to work on a healthy lifestyle. Let me give you some pro tips on how to get better quicker. First, and then he goes in, and like this person goes into 30 or 40 seconds of over technical things, but in an incredibly condescending way, and like maybe trying to dumb down it in a way so the kid will understand. And my only take on this is this guy just clout chased off of a kid who has no semblance of interaction with anyone online. They were doing it in a self-motivated way, because I looked at the kid's original video. So it's just some guy he picked up out of nowhere, and he's clout chasing by making himself, in my opinion, like he's killing a lot of birds with 1 stone. But yes, it's out of compassion, it's out of empathy. He wants this kid to become like a unit by the time they're 18 years old and a squat master or something. So he broke down all these pro tips, and I'm like, so you're grooming the kid? No, I'm just kidding. That's a little, what I can think about is this person really has a genuine heart of going out and trying to help this kid. But at the same time, first, I believe the kid is probably old enough to adaptively learn, or maybe not adaptively learn. You don't know, really. That's an assumption you're making. Also, you're offering technical advice to a kid who's exploring their body. Does this person know you? You're basically a stranger approaching this person. So here's all the underlying dangers of the online sphere, right? You are legitimately constantly interacting with everyone. So is this guy's advice taking out the risk of the people around this kid, like his parents and his... What you're doing is great, is intended out of all like the, like the generosity of your heart. However, to me, there are unintended consequences of what this person is doing. He is a stranger online, foreseeably getting clout on the side, went out of his way, motivated to interject and intervene into another person's, like, a growing kid's, like, self-motivation, telling the kid what to do that's right or wrong, that's outside the context of those around him. And what do you have now? Well, let's just ask all the 20-year-olds who are getting most of their advice online, whether they like it or not, and accepting it as fact. And I mean fact or fiction, because influencers can tell you what's wrong or right all the time, and it's out of the goodness of their heart, but they are no longer receptive to anything else. So there's a time and place to be appropriate. And I think, to me, when I saw that kid, good on that kid. I think if he sees that he feels like tenderness somewhere and whatnot, perhaps he'll have a good support system that isn't just a random influencer that can't possibly know the conditions that kid is operating on to motivate themselves. You could be helping, but you can also be doing just as much harm by making such a big presumption about a healthy, a pudgy looking 13-year-old. But dude, that's a 13-year-old kid. As much as I want to believe this person has grown up with a genetic disposition for heavy weight, that kid can naturally become an incredibly thriving athlete statistically most of the time when they become 18, because you do tend to be quite heavy when you're still a growing boy. So that kind of stuff is why I'm starting to not think like I was when I was a kid, where what's the harm, all the information on the internet, you can get it at any time. Is there a time? Is there too young to be exposed to everything? Well, when I was younger, I kind of thought the same. However, when I was younger, I was also incredibly depressed. I was depressed, nihilistic, didn't want to make friends because friends just get in the way of your career that you need in another 15 years, because when you become an adult, friends doesn't help you get to your job very soon in high school. All those things that came with also knowing things very, very quickly. Like, I knew things very, very quickly. My argument for that is, on the internet, how often are you reading real facts? You're not reading... If you're looking for real facts, you have a perspective problem already. The idea that facts have to be real to be good. You can tell someone that they're the best player in the world and it makes them the most successful kid in the world. That doesn't have to be a real fact. 99% of the time is not fact. It's irrelevant. You think that facts would make someone successful or more likely to be healthy or not healthy. That's not what I'm talking about. No, my entire discussion was not about facts. It's about understanding the person's mind. Minds don't operate necessarily specifically on facts. So you're doing what most internet people are doing. I'm talking about not understanding the people who you're telling information to. So you can tell a kid the correct way to do a squat all you want. What are you taking away from the kid by telling them your accurate way of doing a squat? Well, you might be able to get the kid to do a squat the way you do a squat. And if it happens, it becomes a fact. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't become a fact. What is fact is what is observed. So on the internet, when you say 99% of the time it's not fact, that is incredibly myopic. 70 to 80% of the stuff, 70 to 80% of content online is facts. You're just looking at facts in a different manner. And this is gaslighting now, but this is worth inculcating. What you observe is fact. What people say is what you're focusing on. But what I'm saying is the focus is on the person saying the thing. Those are facts. What do I see? I see a 13-year-old doing a squat. That is a fact. What you see in the video are all facts. Doesn't have to be the entire truth because it's behind the frame. But what you observe is always facts. So when you say 99% of the time it's not fact, that is absolutely illogical. What I'm doing right now is staring at a scene of a loop of judgment while literally talking about the perspective of what I'm seeing online. I'm not talking about the validity of their information, which is what you focused on. All the things you see posted on YouTube is literally facts about that person. Most people, when they watch YouTube, perhaps, I would say a good majority of people are concerned of what the person is saying literally, not what the person is showing you. You're changing the rules now. You're changing the rules. You meant for research things or document things that people use to study and whatnot. Is that 99% of the time? It's not. So you changed the rules and you invalidated your previous sentence. Yeah, it's 99% if you only look at the things you wanted to look at. And that's what that dude did. That dude saw a kid who was clearly doing a squat inexperienced, and they thought they were an expert. They see all the errors that that kid was making. So it is No, it's not, but people will use 1 or 2 cents of it and make a whole thing about it. You just did that. But you just said 99% of the time, it's not facts. Everything you see is a fact. Like what we're doing right now is a fact that we're having this discussion. You trivialize what is right in front of you to prioritize things that benefit you in your arguments. I mean, you can keep doing it, but I'm gonna keep counter-arguing you because you're choosing to only see part of the picture. Like, no, but it's not, but people will use 1 or 2 sentences of it and make a whole thing out of it. What is the percentage of that? It's clearly not 99%. If it was 99%, I guess I'm in the 1% that don't use 1 or 2 sentences of it to make a whole thing about it, while you just did. So here's the thing. We're not concerned about facts right here. I'm concerned about the well-being of people. If you think that everything is not facts on the internet, then you're a person who doesn't believe that there are facts on the internet. And that tells me something about you. So what does that tell me about what I'm saying? Yeah, I know. You said there are. So what I'm going to tell you is that because you said that, I won't tell you any facts. There 100% are truths. Of course there are 100% are truths. You only have to find one, and that confirms your perspective. But a lot of lies, what you record is not a lie. Like, I don't understand what is your obsession with trying to prove your own point when it's erroneous logically. I agree with you. There's 100% are truth. You only have to find one. What's truth? You're being narcissistic right now. How is that truth? Well, it's not true to you, but it's true to me. That's one truth. You believe a lot are lies. That's a truth. That's a fact to you. We're talking about people's perception of truth, not the thing that you're selecting on, which is educational material. I can tell you that educational material does not make up most of the internet. In fact, opinions are what makes up most of the internet if you're going in that line of thought. Yeah, so yes, I agree. Most of the... I don't know how to tell you this, but what people say can be inaccurate, I suppose. Is most of what people say inaccurate? I wouldn't know. I mean, I wouldn't be as bold as to say that 99% of it is inaccurate and that a lot of it are lies. I think people are compassionately sympathetic and they tell the best truths they can. It turns out to be a lie to people who find it inaccurate, so there's a disagreement. So, for example, what you just said basically is an attempt at gaslighting someone else. And I would say if I'm susceptible to gaslighting, I would agree with you. But I'm not. Because you told a lie to me just now. And that's the irony here. I understand where you're coming from, though. Absolutely. It does feel that way. You don't have to... Okay, so... Yeah, I can't say it's 99% inaccurate because I didn't do the studies, so I'm no 100% sure that's true. That's fair. What you said is fair. But I had no reason to talk about studies. The idea is to understand the person. There's one person who happens to be an influencer who thought that they're in the right because they know the facts to help a kid. Yet they didn't observe that the fact is it's a kid who is 13 years old, motivated to do squats, and there was no indicator that the kid wanted to look for expert advice. That's a fact. Everything you see in the frame is an observational fact. So, when you're talking about facts, everything recorded is a fact. What you say, what you type right now are factual because you said them. what they mean could be inaccurate and lies and studies and whatnot, but you did them. So a lot of times when you're watching a YouTube video, my primary focus is what are the motivations, what I see, what those tell me about the motivations of the person. While you spend most of the time, which I would probably say is very reasonable, if you go online, most of the comments tend to focus on the information that is being presented. However, for every one video that says this is a life hack, there are, I would say, at least hundreds of videos just showing someone doing something. And then you might counter argue and say, well, some people fake those, right? They fake them. Like, this guy didn't really do a flip. It's like, what's fact is, if you know they didn't do it, they edited it. That's a fact. A video exists that was edited by a person to make it look like they did a flip. That's a fact. Everything on the internet that's published is a fact, whether it's erroneous or not. As in, you can be incriminated for telling misinformation because it's a fact that you provided misinformation. So the perspective is that 100% of the things on the internet are facts about the video. They are observable facts. Whether they are valid or not, yeah, you can go about it all you want. Like, I can't say I'm an expert enough to say anything, so I typically don't say anything about most of those things. I spend most of my time staying out of those things because a lifetime is not long enough to validate any of those things. Yeah, so and the focus of my digression was on observing what is fact about it. So, and then what presumptions someone makes. So this influencer presumes certain things, and I presume certain things. And the idea was to offer an alternative perspective. That person is far more justified in doing whatever they want, right? They practice calisthenics. They know how to do a proper squat. They're using the kid's video as a way to demonstrate how to improve on a squat from where the kid is. Fair enough. I offered an alternative perspective. The facts are, he presumed the kid wanted help because it's implied that he offered help without the kid asking for help. And those are facts, right? That's literally what's observed in those videos. And then I made a counter argument because it's a fact that I believe there's no reason to believe that the kid was asking for help. And I said it because it's a fact I believe that. Nothing about like what is it really accurate to do a squat? Do kids need to worry about doing a squat that early in the age? Do they have to just, it's a discussion of what the video literally shows. And I think there are less and less of that. I actually do feel most people do not think about the people that make videos and their motivation anymore. They typically just focuses on what it is trying to show in a sense of like education, like objectivity. They're trying to find a lot of objectivity in subjective framework. You've been running a mile a day because it's been helping me. So for me, I say what you talk about working out is helping. Yeah, the mile thing. Just like a slight digression before we go back to playing video games. when it comes to the mile thing, how to relate to this is that I run 3 miles every day now. Like, it's been 2 months. We passed the 2 months mark, so it's been 10 months and 1 week since I ran every single day, with the exception of 4 days because of Otakon. I'm aware who you are, Josh. I know. The thing is, I wrote, I write how often I run things, but there's no evidence that I actually ran them, right? So if we're talking about facts and fiction, technically, if someone says that they don't know if I ran them, I would say yes, true. You don't know. So that's when you have trust, right? So now here's the thing. This is what I was talking about. Would you trust someone who does? Would you? How would you interpret someone's motivation to write how often they run with no way of knowing other than knowing them personally, versus someone who recorded themselves online running? What are the chances that the person... Well, you don't have to know me. You don't have to know me. So here's what we're trying to do, right? So say someone online who expresses that they like running. They talk about running all the time and whatnot, and they just talk about different running things. And then you have someone recording themselves running, right? So there's one person who doesn't need affirmation, so they're not looking for clout on the running. And then there's one person who's running for the sake of clout chasing. Now, they are both similar people. They both probably did a lot of running, in my opinion, because one expresses running interest a lot and then maybe glancingly talk about it. And then there's one person who records it to demonstrate that they did. So the question is, what are their motivations? Well, clearly one person likes the idea of running and probably runs in a casual sense. And then the other person is running to keep themselves honest. So these are two different people who you could say the facts they're trying to communicate is that they run. In one case, it's a fact that they run the way they show it, and then the other one is just words. So now, to better understand the two, there's one person who claims to run without having the urge of showing that they did the running. What does that say about that person versus a person who decides to record themselves running in order to show that they're running? What can you learn about those people? That's kind of what I'm doing here. And it's so much more fascinating, in my opinion. It's really not a concern about what is inaccurate or what is facts or not. It's trying to understand the person, right? And yeah, you can make comments like, people lie all the time, people tell the truth all the time, but you're not learning anything. It's hard to tell without knowing the person. That's the limit. You don't have that luxury. It's hard to tell without knowing the person. You don't have that luxury when you're trying to make decisions. So when you're evaluating someone based on their memory of how accurate they are and how much body of knowledge and semantic knowledge they are, you have less of a chance of being able to know a person than trying to get into that person's shoes through the facts that they show on a YouTube video. When you say there are a lot of lies out there. People choose to lie. Do you understand why they're lying? Because if you did understand why they're lying, you would know about the person more than focusing on the fact that they lied. Like what they lied about. So inherently, you spend most of the time focusing on the one thing content creators are genuinely not trying to demonstrate, in my opinion. A person is motivated to make content in some reasonable form. I like to say it's safe to say the vast majority of content creators are not sociopaths in nature. I would like to say most people are somewhat healthy and trying to cope online in some way, right? So here's the thing. You're comparing it's hard to tell without knowing someone, expecting that you get the chance of knowing someone. So you're comparing always having the luxury of knowing someone by choice and not knowing them to tell about it. I'm not comparing those. I'm comparing being sensitive to trying to know someone and being insensitive to it. So your bottom line is somehow everyone's jaded. They're all about lying. Most of the people are inherently providing misinformation. So that's fair. That's an objective way to say it. If they're wrong, they're wrong. If they're not wrong, they're not wrong. You barely learn anything about the people. And online, it's about this. You don't have the luxury of just not practicing the skill of trying to deduce or trying to observe someone. So when you're approaching someone and you're wondering why, if you're wondering why you're so distant, or perhaps have underdeveloped communication skills, lack of sympathy, or maybe lack of empathy, it's not that you're born with, I'm gonna excuse myself for my idealism, but I think most humans are capable of empathy, sympathy in many ways. It's the extent of their practice of sympathy and empathy. Do you spend most of your time practicing those skills? If you do not practice those skills, it's natural to accept that it's underwhelming. So for me, most of the time when I go on a digression, it's about understanding the person. In my opinion, I try my best to try to understand the person. No need to be concerned. I think it would be incredibly detrimental to the future of the internet. If there are some beliefs that I'm willing to say is that if there isn't a paradigm shift in understanding that humans are not robots, are not collectively omniscient just because they use the internet, it would pay for a much more healthier future for a community that's connected to everything. Because there is no possible, comprehensible, logical meaning to expecting that people can fully always be accurate. And using that expectation to cheapen people online, in my opinion, is the reason why a very great contributor to why trust is rarely established online. Until most people understand the motivations and willingness to practice skills that allow one to focus on the person, the creator, the publishers, the developers, the CEOs that are running the companies, other creators, suffering people. If you're dwelling in facts and studies and whatnot, you're concerned with something objective and you sideline the person. So you sideline understanding psychology. it's remarkably how different focusing on the person will do to your perspective and acceptance of interpreting what are facts and what are not facts. You can convince a person to, do more, behave more accurately, or however you want them, more healthy, or promote them to have better habits by understanding the person first, not inundating them with right and wrongs. So if you go up to someone and say, what you're doing is wrong, the inherent reflex is that person is going to counter argue you, and you probably lost your open window for mutual respect already. And it's an uphill battle from there. And that's kind of like 70 to 80% of YouTube comments and Twitch comments. And they're all usually reinforcing facts. So like, it's fact that when you lose at a game, it's an L. Yes, but very slightly no cause the things proven is hard to go. Yes, but very slightly no, cause the things proven is hard to go against. It's hard to go against. As in, it's... No, we're not talking about facts. It doesn't... Okay, so here's... You're talking about, say, like... The skies are... I don't know. Let's say someone says... someone says this is the right way to use... let's just say someone says this is the right way to do a squat. And it's not the right way to do a squat. Right? Like, it's just not... Like, conventionally, I don't know. Let's just say science and like mechanical studies. It's not the right way to do a squat. Or it's not the studied way to do a squat. Okay, so you go up to this person and say, dude, man, you're doing the squat wrong. So on the one hand, you already said it depends on the person, right? You said it varies between people. People's squats are different. And then on the other hand, you're focused on facts. So the thing about facts is that it's gonna make you a very miserable person. Because on the one hand, you want to be nice and sympathetic to people and empathetic to people, but you're focused on facts. What happens with facts is it takes subjectivity out of the equation. So not only do you become that guy that probably feels incredibly narcissistic, as in what's right, those people will be less likely to listen to you. And they will probably be even less likely to take your advice. However, if you spend time to understand their motivation and then listen to them, you might be able to suggest alternatives. And in fact, they might be open to going around and saying, you know what, I should try that, right? So content creation is subjective in nature. There's no way around it. And when you see the YouTube videos, yeah, all the information is subjective in nature. They're not a roaming database. A singular person is not a roaming database. And I like to hope that it doesn't take a logical person, a severely logical person, to understand that a single person, regardless of how their expertise is, will try their best to share what they know. What they know is rarely comprehensive. And then what is comprehensive is what all humans know, which is still not comprehensive. So we can always blow that, we can continuously blow that off to proportion. But what is always relevant in an interpersonal reaction is that there are two human beings. And you spend so little time understanding the human beings. It is so irrelevant what the facts are, because you will not be productively engaged in a discussion. Yeah, I understand, but I was going to like normal things like understanding gravity, or like Neil talking the stuff he's been studying for countless years. What are his motivations saying that? Do you even understand why he's doing that? Understanding gravity? Sure. Are you like, what is the motivation of someone making a video about understanding gravity? So for example, if someone is deliberately and intentionally misrepresenting gravity, your first inclination is to say there's no merit to this video because this person doesn't count as a human being with motivations. It's because their facts are incorrect. I mean, if you want to, you can say that. It is true. Like, what I mean is, like, you can say that. It's definitely an opinion you can have. However, to understand why that video is even made, is it really because the gravity is not being understood? Like, you understand how gravity works. I would imagine that's why you brought those specific examples up. And you understand what Neil says. But what you don't understand is someone who doesn't believe that. Like, I don't think that person has any like, going around telling people that you understand how gravity works isn't going to help you grow as a person, in my opinion. Right? Like, if you're talking about, if you care about yourself, right? If you're talking about, but I'm worried about my information. I'm worrying about people lying to me. Like, I'm talking about a narcissistic perspective. I'm worried about all the people I care about being misinformed and whatnot. It's like, that's fair. So if you know and your people know how gravity works, and then suddenly this person sharing misinformation about gravity, some people sharing misinformation about gravity somehow put the quakes in your boots. As in, like, you suddenly feel, oh no, now I'm not sure about my gravity thing. What does that say about you and that other person? Well, first of all, if you were absolutely sure, it's like, yeah, this sucks. Like, I know what gravity is. What does that say about you? Well, it says that you know how gravity works. And you clearly didn't know anything about the video. I mean, the video doesn't help you in any way, which is fine. So you just spent, and what is the first thought in most people's mind? I just wasted 90 seconds that I can never get back in my life. That's fair. It's your risk. You took your risk. What I tend to not do is I watch that 90 seconds and I learn something else about myself or about that person. How did it make me feel? Like, did it make me question my perceptions of gravity? What if gravity was like that? How can I counter argue that gravity? You can even turn the information into something, but instead you go around looking for affirmation. Like, that's what I'm interpreting, right? Like, you separate facts from fiction. Fiction cannot be worth anything. It's always worth less than facts. So you go around the internet thinking that if someone had misinformation, there's no value to it. I go around deliberately looking for misinformation. And it's the richest source of inspiration because I know what I know. Now I want to know what I don't know. And that also includes misinformation. You mean you think about a sec, but you don't line up? Yeah, you brush it aside. You basically, in my opinion, if I am bold, the vast majority of the stuff you scroll through, you probably don't actively participate in it. And I'm offering an opposing perspective. So when I see something that doesn't agree with me, I look for the motivation for it. Like, okay, what don't I know about it? Or if I were approached with someone like this, how would I talk to someone like this? How could I do something with that information? It is still information, however inaccurate or accurate it is. I'm developing a skill by understanding people's perspective. If you continuously think about yourself and what you think is right and wrong, and you only go online to think about what you want to see and need to see, and never second guessing other things, then well, it's kind of ironic, but you rely so much on research and data when the very thing that makes science what it is what I just described. Information is information at the end of the day. Well, yeah, that's an identity statement. Information equals information. What I'm describing here is there's a difference between information and using information. And you know, one's using and one's not. So when you hear information, you can choose to do nothing with it, which is what you do with everything that disagrees with you. Probably, most of the time. I would say there are occasional times you might not if you have doubts about it. I don't understand the other side, like what flat earth is like a thing. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're choosing things that you probably feel strongly about. So far you chose scientific things like the physical world. So gravity, what Neil, I'm guessing you're talking about Neil deGrasse, right? Keep forgetting his full name, but and then flat earth. Like, now let's not pick the easier ones. Let's not go with the shorthand ones, because now you talk about it depends. So you picked all the it depends ones. Yeah, deGrasse. Oh, wait, or are you talking about Neil? There are a lot of Neils. But anyways, okay, so let's just talk about not the it depends ones, like the conversation we're having right now. I'm not telling you any facts right now. I don't think I want to tell you any facts, because I believe when a healthy human being should practice the skill of being able to communicate before even concerning about facts. And when you communicate, it's irrelevant what you communicate with. Like, how can you talk about facts when you lack communication skills? Is it possible to be someone who can evaluate fact from fiction, from lies, from the value of content creation, if one does not have command of communication skills? And communication skills, I don't think that's fair. Okay, I won't use the word facts or anything like that. We're talking about communication, all right? So, because you're still focused on that. So we're gonna separate ourselves as much as we can. So let's just talk about like lying. So let's talk about lying. How can you understand lying? Well, you certainly can't understand lying by checking if it's a lie. I mean, like you can kind of. Actually, I'm a little bit hyperbolic about that. You can probably glean a little bit from the type of lie or the context of the lie. For example, the liar, knowing about the liar can get you a lot more information about the lie. I'm not. You brought it up, so I thought you were bringing it back up, and I know I was using it as a wrong term. You brought it up again. I mean, sure. All right. So whatever I guess whatever I brought up unintentionally, I guess. That's deflection in my opinion, but either that, you have no. I don't think it's incredibly reliable for someone who makes comments about the subjectivity of fact and fiction when they are unable to understand the perspective of other people. So that's the hot take here. So where does this all go back to? It goes back to this statement, actually. I read online that it's past the statute of limitations. That's where it all started. Actually, it also started with something Worm said a bit back, because what was it? Preselection. That's right. Preselection. So preselection deals with understanding perspectives. If you understand, in my opinion, it is far more informative and consistent when you're online and interacting with people. Online is inherently an interpersonal. Let's just wrap up this stuff. Online is an interpersonal activity, and we understand that online originally, when it was made, is a form of escapism. It's a place where you can find perhaps solace in understanding that there are other people like you. That's escapism. Playing video games, inherently escapism for the vast majority of people, not the minority. I will speak a little bit to that. Content creation, inherently escapism, but requires the understanding of people's perspective. There are rarely anything online that I'm gonna say the vast majority of people who use online recreationally is anything remotely pre-selected to be scientifically reliable, research, or facts bound. So being sensitive to that, knowing that the vast majority of users use online as a form of escapism and expression, going around cheapening the value and merit of that and being frustrated possibly, or angry, or scared, or concerned, is a failure to understand what the vast majority of people who go online would do. Now, with that said, there are minority people, I would say 15, let's just say 15 to 20%, that would argue, nah, I don't go online for that. I go online to look for facts and information and, you know, research and study and stuff. but you go on recreationally for that information. So here's what I mean by the motivation. Okay, I need to understand if this product I'm buying is reliable. Well, the Amazon rating has 50,000 people who says so. I'm not going to read much into that. That's good enough. I'm going to buy this product. That's recreational research. Research is a professional thing. It's a skill that is incredibly well practiced. And it usually doesn't line up with most of the stuff people pre-select into. So what I mean by that is, if a person is trying to do research, but they have not developed the skills to do research, how do you expect them to evaluate and critique the validity of research? I'm going to say this very lightly because I don't necessarily think people go online for information for validity. They go online for confidence. And what I mean by confidence is the idea that there are other people in agreement with them, not the idea that there are people testing things. And I can assure you that what I did for a living, it's not even covered on YouTube or anything. Like the vast medium that most people use to collect information or to validate information is not the stuff that online traffic goes to. So the fact a lot of times is that people's perception of what research is selected by what they're going online to do, which is trying to find information that promotes their confidence. So are you confident about this purchase? Well, let's do some research. Enough people agree that this product is good. I'm gonna buy it. Is this game popular? Well, enough people agree that this game is popular. Neat. And therefore it's popular. When you do research, you're not looking for anything. Generally speaking. Like, you don't look for a preconceived notion of something. When you're purely doing research, you're asking a question without an answer. So when someone comes to me and say, the research says this, and it makes sense, I'm like, did it make sense before you look for the research? Because generally, that's not how it goes. Because if you try to make sense of it and look for research, then you're only looking for the thing that you're looking for. You're fishing now. And you're doing exactly the same thing that most people are doing online. They're looking for consensus. The word I would use is consensus, but it's consensus of subjectivity. And understanding that that's what online is for is refreshing. It makes it feel like you understand people's motivations. And when, in my opinion, when you understand people's motivations, it no longer becomes like a source of who's right and who's wrong, and what is the value of this and what's the value of that. I can be happy that I bought a product that 100 other people also enjoy. Is it accurate that the product is the best product for its money? At least 100 people. 100 people is enough for me to agree that. So the facts are 100 people agree with me that I know like the product and it's worth the value. When you're gonna go do research, you ask how you measure, right? How you measure value, how you measure the product, what are the parameters? Generally speaking, methodology, research, and facts are just as weak as the lack of methodology. So when someone says, oh, gravity, this is what we believe in gravity, what was the methodology? So when someone talks about, I understand how gravity works, do you? What's the methodology? I don't tend to oversell myself based on my incompetence on how research works. Because I have an appreciation for those who do research, and I don't do research anymore. And I think it's unfair of me and unjustified of me to not understand from the perspective of the other person. What they consider research is very acceptable to them. So I no longer am compelled to be jaded and cynical by placing my own personal experience without understanding the motivation of another person. For you don't look at reviews because most people won't say anything if they are or love the product. So because you don't look at reviews, you can't possibly make a critique on reviews. It's a paradox. You just said you don't look at reviews, so you can't say any of the things afterwards. You have no experience. You don't know anymore. That's the bane of research. If you want objectivity, you have to, and you're living in a world that you need to observe, you actually have to do the thing in order to even remotely understand it. So what you just said is, I don't look at reviews, so I should ignore everything you say about reviews because you don't look at them. You can't possibly say any of that if you don't actually do it. Just like you don't understand that people lie because you don't look at people lying. Yeah, I have no say on reviews, but I'll use a product before. That's fair. Yeah, you have a lot of trust. I'm just saying that your logic is invalid. As in, you can't say you don't look at reviews because you don't trust them. That's probably the phrase that's most accurate. You just don't trust other people. That's what you're telling me here, Josh. You have trust issues, and that's perfectly fine online. I think there are many reasons, many things that would promote someone to have insecurities about trust online. I think that's incredibly healthy for someone to be incredibly cautious about talking and chatting with people online. I think that's a really healthy habit in general. Not understanding what that may mean, like from the way you say things, that can be a little problematic. I look at reviews and I still use products after, regardless, if I so analyze it, right? So I have my own take on it and I still look at reviews because I have to understand how people review things. I can't be a person who talks about people's perspective on evaluating value if I don't spend time looking at how they evaluate products on value. And then if I decide to make a decision based on my assumptions without experience, then I worry about my own continuity between my intellectual side and my emotional side. I mean, if there is 200 that says bad and one says it's great, for me, I like how it worked for me using my friends, I'll still grab it. That means you look at reviews. You make a decision. Because you just said you're looking at your friend's review to grab it. It's kind of ironic that you say that because you talked about research, and that's like antagonistic to research. But it sounds like you trust your friend quite a bit, so that's fair too. All that tells me is you trust your friend's reviews. That's still looking at reviews. Only you pre-selected your friend. Your pre-selection is that it has to be someone you trust beforehand. You also have to trust that your friend is the same people who can't possibly know everything. You're saying you used to. You used it. No, I'm saying I used it? You mean like you used a review? You just said, I mean, if there is 200 that says it's bad and 1 says it's great. Like, let's say it's a keyboard headset. Go ahead. And then 200 people say it's bad. Oh, I see. No, I understand what you just typed. I actually misread it. You tested your friends and then you grabbed it because you liked it. That's fair. Again, you're making a condition where you have the option of doing so, but we're really not talking about that. So you're assuming that most people who look at reviews have access to the item already, and they choose to trust the review than testing the item themselves. That's not how reviews work, in my opinion. Logically, people are looking at reviews because they don't have access to that item to test, to make a decision about it. Yeah, but your example is basically talking about how you do things without understanding what reviews are for. And I'm just telling you that the perspective of the usefulness of reviews are literally the thing you don't use, which is fine because you don't care about reviews. And that's all right. You only care about your own reviews. That's fine. So somehow you can trust gravity. You can trust Neil. You can trust around Earth based on statistical merit. Yet you decide to only trust yourself to make decisions. That's tough. I don't know where you draw the line in being able to say I don't know everything. You're saying no. It's so hard to explain. Well, here, let me make sure I got this right. Okay? You said that this keyboard, say it's a keyboard, and it's poorly reviewed. So you're like, nah, I don't believe that. Let me test it so I can determine it for myself. Okay? That's what you're trying to say. And then you found out it's good. So I'll grab it. You literally learned nothing about anyone else who said it was bad. You wouldn't see or read the review before, so you read and see the review after? If you're saying you do a keyboard, like you use the keyboard without doing the review, and then you find out after, you literally just did the thing that you hate, which is looking at reviews because people will write anything because they love the product or hate the product. You are one of those people. You have just described one of those people. So the very reason you don't read reviews is because you are one of those people. I don't know if you see the paradox in this. And I think it's still healthy. It's still usable. But the irony here is you just described 99% of the people that like it won't write a review. That is so not true. That is so not true. It's actually bimodal. People who really like it tend to write reviews, and people who really hate it tend to write reviews. People who are mid and tolerant tend not to write reviews. That is so not true. Not even close to 99%. It's not even close to 99%. People who love it write reviews, and people who hate it write reviews. You're just mid then? You're not. You just explained 99%, 100%. Never look at reviews. Always do something before. You're part of the bimodal distribution. Your behavior is bimodal. You are non-tolerant of pretty much anything. You don't list back and forth. You don't hate and like things back and forth. You're not a balanced thing. You're not in the dip. You're at the other end. Which end it is depends on the condition you are doing. If you hate it, you're going to gravitate towards the hate side. If you like it, you gravitate towards the like side. That's the irony here, I think. I don't know if that makes sense, or I'm giving you the perspective of from someone outside who can't relate to you. I read reviews. I do my own reviews. Both. I need to understand what other people think so that I can understand what I think means something with the respect of other people. You choose to only trust yourself. If you only trust yourself, you also hate anybody who only trusts themselves. You tend to not resonate with disagreeable people because you yourself are disagreeable. You choose to always trust your own experiences over others. And those reviews that you hate are people who only trust their experiences of themselves. So if they love a product, they will only review the product the way they want. If they love the product, they'll only give it a 10 out of 10. If they hate the product, they'll always give it 1 out of 10. In fact, I think they won't even use the product and still have the same score. You decide to ignore reviews because you assume that's the only reviews you'll ever see. That's actually quite fair. And then consequently become one of those people. And I think that's healthy. I mean, if you're always trusting your own experiences, I don't think you can, what does that do? It prevents you from remorse, I guess. Regret, I guess. You gain resilience to things. You know that you tested it yourself. You have no one to blame but yourself, which is great, right? Now, as long as you're happy with some of these things, I named 2 really big ones, but the drawback is that when you fail, you are the only person who can help yourself. You are not going to be able to express it to anyone else. You will have trouble communicating to other people because you spend most of the time just trusting yourself. So if you don't need anybody else and perfectly happy with that, that's great. As in, it works out, it checks out. So you won't be emotionally feeling like you're alone. Everyone lies to you, right? Everyone lies to you is a great one because you don't spend any time thinking about other people. So obviously most people will lie to you. well, most of the people will feel like they're lying because you can't relate to them, right? You're going to be in constant disagreement with most people. Sometimes, if you get lucky, coincidentally, other people like things you like. And that can work out really well. And I think one of the great things that you can do to make your life happier, in my opinion, is find those coincidences. If you like something and it just so happens to be popular, I would highly encourage you to keep those close to your heart, because those things won't come by very often. And you only have yourself to solve problems, right? And you can't be a great judge of character. So making good friends, making lasting relationships, that's no longer a thing. If you choose to be a loner, plus. If you want friends and reliable people, that's a negative. As in, your skills and perceptions won't get you to those places. Because you will likely find lots of people, since you don't spend time judging character, as in bootstrapping and understanding other people's perspective, it will be inherently a deficient skill to understand who is reliable and loyal to you. Like, it's gonna be hard to see loyalty, how to see if someone is lying to you or not, and someone who has ulterior motives. So anything you say about another person will be deficient and unreliable because you don't spend time thinking about other people. So for example, going back to the idea of, does this person have my best interest in mind? If they do, am I concerned about what they're telling me? Well, if I spend most of my time judging or like deducing and learning about other people's perspective, I can see that this person has a better time understanding the judgment, like the judge of character. So it's very healthy. I surround myself with people I rely. You don't want to home young? I mean, that's the whole idea of this. This is why I stream games, right? So we can stop here though. The hot take. Let's wrap up the hot take, right? I was trying to make it a single core. A singular core theme. And the theme is interpersonal skills are great if you want to be. It kind of hit different for you. I mean, that's fair. It should hit different for you because you're probably someone incredibly different from me, like very different from me. And the reason, here's a great reason why I have these digressions, because I actually think that I'm in the minority. Until someone can prove to me that I'm in the majority online, I like to think most of the consensus that I have is that the things I say is interesting because it hits differently. It's not because it hits the same. If it hits the same, I don't think I would share it because ultimately it's less interesting, in my opinion. Or at least how I understand why people come online. They tend to want to hear something different. The nice thing about talking about these things is I'm not sharing facts. There aren't any facts here. Like, I don't have to read a glossary of terms or statistics. I'm just sharing anecdotal information that may not be relevant or relevant. And I'm downplaying, actually, the idea that I can even know a lot of facts. I don't think I know a lot of facts. It's very difficult for a human being to do so. And therefore, I don't expect other people to do so as well. So it's more the concern of investing time in anyone who's willing to share and stay and talk about things. So that's a wrap, I guess. Trying to be, I don't know, mindful of perspective, and you can talk for days, all the time. Now that we're wrapping up here for that digression, the hot take is it's very fun for me to think about what I can say about the person. It's a fun challenge, is saying things of what that person is not telling me, but showing me. And, you know, you could lie to me, but I'm more curious about why you're lying to me and how you're lying to me. Like, if I asked you to lie to me, I want to ask you how you go about doing that without me knowing, or something. Like, how do you form a lie? What motivates you to form a lie? How do you feel when you lie to someone? Does it matter if it's someone you like or someone you don't like? It's about discovery. And if you spend a lot of time thinking about other people, it can also help as well thinking about yourself. It's sometimes, you know, for me, I like to take a break from myself. Actually, I spend most of the time taking a break from myself. And break would imply I don't want to be myself. Sorry, that's not the word. I want to live with more perspective. It's less interesting if all the perspectives come from just myself. I guess that's a better way to say it. I don't want to say that I hate myself. I definitely don't hate myself. But I also don't think I'm the most interesting thing to myself. And focusing on other people's perspective gets you a lot of things, especially long-winded conversations.